John F. Kennedy's inaugural address inspired children and adults to see the importance of civic action and public service. Its historic words: "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country," challenge every American to contribute in some way to the public good. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day, wherever you are in the world. My name is Olubusola, and this is the month of October's webinar brought to you by Orgasm Reform Institute. And for the month of October, we are going to be looking at the topic effect of sexual values on the nation. Effect of sexual values on the nation. I know you know your life values. I know you have values for your life and all that. But have you ever asked yourself what your sexual values are? Most of us are on this table. Most of us are sitting on this table. We don't even know what sexual values are. Not talk of our own personal sexual values. Today we are going to be going on a journey on sexual values and the role they play on the nation. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask rather what you can do for your country. And that's a popular quote from John F. Kennedy. Regarding the nation's sexual sanity, today I'll be teaching us what we can do to contribute positively, because the state of a nation is as a result of each citizen's action. So the level of productivity we see in a nation is as a result of how productive each person in that nation is, and vice versa. And the level of sexual decadence in a nation is the accumulation of each citizen's sexual values, beliefs, actions, etc. And to effect a positive change in the nation, we start from the smallest unit of the nation, family. Actually, most of us don't even know that there are things we should do for our nation. I know most of us, we did civic in secondary school, we did social studies in secondary school, and maybe we did not really understand, or we were not even listening in class when we were taught civic duties and civic rights, citizens' duties and citizens' rights. Your right as a citizen is what the government will do for you, what you can benefit from the government, while your citizen duty is what you do for the government. Is what you do for the government. A lot of us complain about the government not doing this, the government not doing that, but you yourself, are you doing what you should do for your country? Are you playing your role like the citizen of that country? If you don't know these things, then there is no way the country will be conducive for us. And looking at the world, looking at your country as an example, and looking at the world generally, sexually, the world is in a mess. Sexually, the world is in a mess. And one of the reasons why the world is in a mess sexually is because we as individuals, we do not know what to do. We do not know that our sexual actions tell on our nation. So you're just blaming the neighbor next door. Each of us, every one of us, we are to be blamed for every decadence that is in the nation or the world at large, because we've not played our part. We've not done what we should do for our society. Like I said earlier, to effect a positive change in the nation, we start from the smallest unit of the nation. And what is the smallest unit of the nation? The family. The family. And if you look at the family now, there's been a rise in the level of separation, level of hatred, level of strife at home. Even the family is going through troubles. Like, the number of families that are actually sane in a nation, they are less than 50% of the nation's population, which is very, very bad. Very, very bad. We're not going to deny the fact that we grew up in homes where we cannot talk about sex freely. We grew up in homes where our parents, they live in denial. They live in denial as if no, we are not engaging in sexual activities or something like that. They are shy to bring up the topic sex. And obviously this silence from the older generation also played a part in the level of sexual decadence we see in the world today, because at they been they stood their ground and trained us on how to behave well sexually, and not just the rules and regulations, because rules and regulations do not give life. Rules and regulations don't give life, they rather keep us in bondage. So had it been our parents have stood up for our sake and done the work to feed us with sexually sane information, then there would have been a level of sexual morality in the nation. But no, our parents were quiet. They didn't talk about sex. They didn't talk to us about sex. The only thing they did was just to give us rules and English. And there are even some modes that they never bother telling them don't have sex to marriage. Everybody just kept mute as though they didn't have sex to give birth to us. Now, we that are said to take responsibility for the coming generation, how do we fill this gap? How do we fill this gap? How do we build sexual values in our homes that will positively impact on the society and the country at large? How do we fill this gap? As a citizen, one of the actions to engage in is to help build a sexually sane nation. And one of the ways to do that is to instill sexual values into your homes. Instilling sexual values into our homes will help build a sexually sane society, sexually sane community, which will also expand to the nation and from the nation to the world. Most of us can easily name what our values in life are. Like I said earlier, when you ask someone what are your life values, we are quick to say love, honesty, integrity, excellence, unity, growth, and all that. But when it comes to sexual values, I was actually teaching some time ago, and I asked them, what is a sexual identity? Nobody could answer. Like, isn't it amusing how basic information like what is your sexual identity, what are your sexual values, we cannot even say, we cannot even give expression to these words, but yet we engage in sexual activities. When you don't know your sexual identity, when you don't know your sexual values, whatsoever activity you are engaging in is wrong, because you don't even know the basic thing, you don't even know the foundation of sex itself. So now I'm asking you, without even pausing to think, what are your sexual values? A lot of people engage in sexual activities without even knowing the basic thing about sex, like your sexual identity, your sexual values, your sexual rights. I did a webinar sometimes ago on sexual rights, but eventually you didn't get to listen to it. Do well to pause this. Yes, pause this at this point. Go back to listen to the webinar on sexual rights, on sexual, because you really need it. Why should you be having sex when you don't even know your sexual rights? Why? Good sexual values translate into good sexual behaviors. A lot of people in the world today are not engaging in good sexual behaviors simply because they do not have a sexual value, or their sexual values is bad. And if we don't know our sexual values, what kind of sexual behaviors have we been engaging in? No wonder why the world is in a mess sexually, because obviously we do not know our sexual values, we do not know our sexual rights. Like I said earlier, if you've not listened to that webinar, do well to pause this, go back and listen. I think it should be July webinar. Go back and listen to that webinar on sexual rights. These are basic things you should know before you start entering a vagina or your vagina entertaining a penis. Know your sexual values, know your sexual rights, know your sexual identity. Who are you? When you know these things, it will dictate on your sexual activity. No one will even tell you wait till married to do this, because normally you will know when it is right for you to engage in sex. And every one of us, we are entitled to the same sexual right. Like the popular saying that no one is more Nigerian than the other. I'm telling you now that no one is more sexual being than the other. Respect my sexual right and I'll respect your sexual right. If your sexual activities are bringing harm to my sexual life, I should sue you for it, because you're endangering my life with your sexual activities. And that is what is happening in our nation today. A lot of people are endangering people's life with their sexual activities, but the victims are never coming up to talk because they do not know their sexual rights. They do not know that their sexual rights should be known, protected, and you should demand respect for your sexual rights. Your sexual rights should be respected, but people do not know. That is why they get abused and they keep quiet. People thrive in shame when it comes to sexual abuses. It shouldn't be so. Your sexual rights should be known. Your sexual rights should be protected. And you should demand respect for your sexual rights. If you've not listened to it, go back and listen, because you really learn a lot. I talked about the principles of sexual rights, and I also stated the different sexual rights which is related to human rights. We can no longer afford to hide our mouths when we talk about sex. No, we can no longer afford to keep quiet related when it comes to conversation related to sex. We can no longer afford to keep acting church when it comes to sex talks. No, we need to be more intentional, we need to be more loud, we need to be more profound on sex conversations. Enough is enough. We need to stop living in denial. We need to stop living in shame when it comes to sex talks, because the effect of our silence is really endangering the lives of a lot of people. The effect of our silence sexually is really endangering our nation's development. When we don't talk openly and honestly about sex in the real world, porn becomes sex education by default. When we don't talk openly and honestly about sex in the real world, pornography becomes sex education by default. By default, and pornography can lead to sexual addiction. And sexual addiction is a neuropsychological disorder whereby the chemicals in your brain no longer function the way they were created to function. And when the nerves in your brain, when the signals in your brain no longer function the way they should function, every part of your life gets affected. And it tells on how you relate to your neighbor. It tells on how you give yourself to the world. It tells on how you serve in different places. And when you're not coming with your best self, the level of productivity reduced. So the consequences for your sexual mistakes are not personal. Every one of us suffer for your sexual mistakes. Everybody. So when it comes to sexual values, establishing a personal code of beliefs concerning your concerning your own sexuality is an essential part of assuming responsibility for yourself as a sexual being. To know what you want and what you do not want and why is critical to becoming a fully realized sexual being. For you to be able to know that this is what I want when it comes to my sexual activities, this is what I do not want, and this is why I want what I want, and this is why I do not want, this is the reason why I do not want what I don't want. It's just a journey to becoming a fully realized sexual being. Because when you know this thing, when you take responsibility of owning your sexuality, it helps you to become a sane sexual being, and you also be able to bring people into that reality. And this also allows you make choices that feels right for you. You make choices that are right for you, not because someone said do this, don't do this, but no, you've weighed the matter. You've seen, okay, this is why I want to do this is why I don't want to do this. You feel empowered. These choices, when you make choices that feels right to you, it is empowering and it is pleasurable because you are not forced. You are not coerced into making that decision. You are making that decision because it is right for you, and not only is it right for you, because now you now have understanding of your sexual rights, and you also know that your sexual right is also the same sexual right of your neighbor. So it feels right for you, and it also feels right for your neighbor. So your sexual activity is not putting someone else's life in danger. So you can say that knowing your sexual value is work. Sexual values bring a value-based system to know how we operate our sexuality and our sex life in the same way we do in every other areas of our lives. It is linked to our personal feelings about what is acceptable and desirable behavior. And obviously, sexual values are shaped by life experiences, the society we live in, our upbringing, and the relationships we are in. Now, these four things influences our sexual values. Now, when you weigh these four things, you need to scrutinize. Okay, this is what influenced me as a sexual person. Do I want to continue like this, or do I want to sit down, know what works for me and what will be beneficial to my neighbor? Because if we are going to go by our upbringing, if we are going to go by our society, if we are going to go by our life experience, if we are going to go by the relationships we've been involved in, our sexual values will end up being negative and bad, which will produce a negative effect. So we want to sit down, scrutinize all this, remove what should be removed, add what should be added, so we can come up with good sexual values, which will translate into good sexual behaviors, which will allow us to make good sexual activities, making the society a sexually sane society. Now, why sexual values? Why do we need to build our sexual values? Number one, it allows us to feel in control of our sex life and to enjoy a strong sexual self-image. When we are in touch with ourselves in this way, we are more likely to be able to make choices that feel good and feel comfortable within ourselves sexually. Number two, it allows us for partners to discuss their sexual values so they can understand, respect each other's attitude, feelings, preferences, and boundaries. Once again, if you've not listened to the webinar on sexual rights, listen to it because you need it. You need to know your sexual rights. And number 3 says, having this conversation is beneficial to young people because it saves us from feeling pressured into acting in certain ways and accepting certain behaviors. A lot of youth today, we have a lot of teenagers, a lot of young adults who engage in sexual activities early because they were pressured into it. But us being loud on our sexual values, that is by socializing our sexual values, its impact on society positively, hence changing the attitude toward consent and rape culture. Gallop. Gallop is the name of a woman who is the founder of Make Love Not Porn, and she said we need to embed in society and openly talked about, promoted, and most aspired to gold standard what constitutes good sexual values and good sexual behaviors. When we are loud on our good sexual values, when we are loud on our good sexual behaviors, it helps to reduce rape culture. It helps to reduce the rate at which young people give consent to early sexual activities. It is not enough to just tell people to use condoms so they won't get pregnant. No. In addition to that, we need to be loud on our sexual values so that people can start exhibiting good sexual behavior. This should be beneficial to everybody. When the rapist have an understanding of good sexual values, it is going to change. Like I said earlier, it is hard work. It is not something you just sleep and wake up and achieve. No. It is something you do continuously. When we uphold our good sexual values publicly everywhere, that's how we stop normalizing sexual harassment, abuse, and violence. So the real deal is not hashtag stop rape on Twitter. No. The real deal is not hashtag justice for so. The real deal is not hashtag end rape. No. Even as we do all those hashtags, we need to be loud on sexual values. We need to be loud on our sexual values. Because we need to show people this is the right way it should be. This is how it should be. This is how it should be. If the society's definition of sex, we've seen the society's definition of sex, I'll say that no, this is not it. We've seen the church definition of sex, and we've seen that no, this is not complete. Then we need to do deep work of what sex is. Then we tell people, we inform people, we get loud on this thing, so that there can be a change in our society. Now, having known all these benefits and all that, how do we discover our sexual values? How do we discover our sexual values? Number 1, start from a positive foundation. You cannot keep saying sex is demonic, sex is rubbish, sex is bad, sex is unholy, and think you are going to build a good sexual value that will translate to good sexual behaviors. No. And also, the fact that you are a Christian doesn't mean you have good sexual values. You need to start from a positive foundation, because you are a sexual being. See, you cannot even deny that fact. You have sexual hormones, you have sexual organs, you are expected to engage in sexual activities. You are a sexual being. It is part of you. And you should not be ashamed of that fact. You shouldn't. You shouldn't be afraid of the fact that you are a sexual being. No, but you should begin to own your sexuality, own it, and honor honor your sexuality, and honoring your sexuality is the ability to feel pleasure and the natural desire for connection. Don't hide in shame. Someone said you do not need to be sexually active to honor your sexual desires. You do not need to be sexually active to honor your sexual nature. Start from a positive foundation. Now, if you do not need to be sexually active to honor your sexual nature, then how do you honor your sexual active nature? Number 2, self-awareness. I sent a mail to those on my mailing list recently titled, "What's your sex story?" What is your sex story? When your children comes, when you give birth to your children, what are your sexual what stories will you tell them regarding your sexual life? What are your sexual stories? What are your sex stories? You need to be, and if you are not self-aware of yourself sexually, if you do not have this self-knowledge, there is no way you will gain self-mastery sexually. And if you've not learned to master yourself sexually, there's no way you can have a story. There's no way you can have a sexual story, because you get your stories from lesson you've learned. You get your story from lesson learned, and someone can learn from your story. So you need to be self-aware of this. You need to be self-aware. You need to have self-knowledge. You need to be self-mastered when it comes to your sexual life. So you can have a story that you can share, so someone can learn. Like I said earlier, when you are loud on your sexual values, it will help reduce consent. And consent, I mean young people engaging in self activity because they get engaging in sexual activity because they get pressured. It will help reduce sexual harassment, abuse, and violence. These are the things you can do for your country. These are some of the things you can do for your country. Be self-aware. Like I said, what is your sexual identity? What is your sexual identity? When people see you, when you start talking about sex, what should be the first thing that should come to people's mind? Who are you sexually? Do you even know who you are sexually? Do you know? You need to start getting to know yourself. So journal these things. Who do you want to be? Who are you sexually? You start by sitting down, reflecting, meditating, and write down your sexual autobiography from past to present. Write it down. Every time that comes into your mind, write it down. Who are you? Who are you sexually? A journal allows you to assume authority over your story. A journal allows you to assume authority over your story. Number 3, reflect on past influences. Reflect on past influences. When it comes to your past sexual life, what is that story like? What is that life like? Is it something you are proud of? Is it something that brings shame? Is it something that makes you feel hurt? Is it something that makes you live in regret? Reflect on it. Reflect on it. And when you reflect on it, if it is something that you are not proud of, then you want to go on a healing journey. You want to do a deep work of cleansing yourself. You need to forgive yourself, go through a healing process, and all that. Another way to discover your sexual value is to listen to your body. Listen to your body. Listen to your body. For the female gender, there is this high urge to engage in sex when you are ovulating. Some ladies do not even know. They don't know. They don't know they are mating. They don't know their heat period. Know your body. Listen to your body. It's not everything is not demon. Everything is not a demon is touching you. No. Your body is communicating to you. Listen to your body. Listen to your hormones. If there has been a rise in in your sexual or recently you want to know, am I currently ovulating, am I in my eat period, or is it that I have consumed a level of sexual content I shouldn't consume for this week? You need to know yourself. This is your body. Listen, be intentional about the sexual information you get in. Pay attention to your intuition. And before I move to the final one, I want you to know that it is important for you to know that your sexual values belong to you. I'm not in the place to come and tell you that your number one sexual value is this, your number two sexual value is this. No, your sexual value is personal to you. It is when you finish, it is when you've discovered some things about yourself. Those are the things, when you're self-aware about your sexual life, that is what allows you draft out your sexual values. This is why I believe that abstinence rules is not for everybody. When you don't know yourself sexually, you cannot know what works for you sexually. So the fact that this person said this is what they did, if you want to do that thing, you will fall. You will make mistakes. Your sexual values are personal to you. No one is coming to tell you that this is your sexual value, this is number one, this is number two. No. Find out by yourself. It is personal to you. It is not up to anyone to tell you what you should do. No, it is not up to anyone. It is your sexual life and it is your business. What I just want you to know is your sexual rights, your sexual values, and your sexual identity. I know you don't know. Maybe the church has hid it from you, but your sexual activity is actually nobody's business. Your sexual activity is not anybody's business. In as much as you know your sexual rights and you know that your sexual activity should not endanger your neighbor's life, then finally educate yourself. Be curious. Do not settle for general talks about sex. Be curious, seek out knowledge, seek out scientific studies, research, and expert advice. An understanding of your own preferences and desires will only be enhanced by real knowledge about the human body and sexual processes. So seek out scientific studies, research, and expert advice. Seek out knowledge. When it comes to your sexual life, the key player is you. Thank you for listening to this month's webinar. I believe you've learned something. Till I come your way another month, I remain Olubusola Akisheyodu, founder, Orgasm Reform Institute. For you to join my mailing list, the link will be in the description box. And don't forget to share this link with your friend. Like, after all this I've told you today, you don't want to keep this wealth of information to yourself. Inform someone, share the link with your friend. Bye-bye.